All right, guys. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us for our second in our immune webinar series. This one is on sunlight, not just vitamin D. So we're gonna be talking about how you can boost your immune system, because as we covered in our last webinar about coronavirus, our opinion is that it's going to be coming back, because I don't think it's really gone away fully. So it's going to, even if it has, regardless of which way it goes, it's either going to come back as the same thing. So if you didn't catch it this time, you might catch it next time, or it's going to come back as an evolved coronavirus, kind of like the flu, where it'll be a little bit more seasonal. So perfect timing, Cleo. Can you guys hear that? Are you mad?
Yells. The cat yells.
You gonna yell? You gonna be in the spotlight, or you're just gonna be annoying? So, yes. So we are going to be exposed most likely to either the same coronavirus or a new one. So we are doing as much education as we can to try to help you guys make different choices and to improve your health. So then that way, if you do end up getting exposed, your immune system can fight it off more effectively. Because that's your best line of defense, is your immune system. You're born with it.
Right.
Right?
Ultimately, if this goes the way of any other pandemic, and there's been a number of pandemics, if you look back in history, going all the way back to ancient times, to the Roman Empire, about every 30 years or so, there's some kind of pandemic. So the best, ultimately, everybody on the planet does get exposed, and really your best line of defense is to certainly do social distancing, wear your mask, do all that stuff, but boost your immune system in case any of those other systems fail. So that's why we're here talking about, oh, there's Cleo. That's Cleo.
Cleo's stealing the show, aren't you?
She's the world's most antisocial cat.
She only comes out when we're talking to cameras.
So,
don't you?
someone else is popping in here.
That might be my dad.
We'll see.
All right, can I let you go? You want to go down? No? You gotta go down. There we go.
See
All right. It is tough to talk with a cat. Hi, Dad.
Hey, Brian.
So,
There we go.
welcome. You just got to see Cleo. All right. So, if you guys have questions during this and you want to, if you need us to stop to answer your question, just like raise your hand, we'll stop. We'll unmute you and we'll get your question. Otherwise, if it can wait to the end, that's fine too. All right. So, we wanted to talk about sunlight. Woohoo! So everybody knows about vitamin D, because vitamin D is what your body creates when it's exposed to sunlight. And vitamin D is a critical part of your immune system, and not a lot of people realize that sometimes. We all know that vitamin D is good for like your bones. Everybody knows about like rickets. But they don't always realize that it has a lot to do with your immune system. So vitamin D is actually known, and this is like Western medicine too, it's not just me saying it. Is that Cleo's gonna be doing this all night, aren't you? But vitamin D helps to boost your helper T and your B cells, which are some of the primary cells with your immune system. It also helps modulate, so it helps up and lower your immune system, both your innate, which is the one you're born with, and your acquired, which is the one that you build up as you're exposed to things. So if you're never exposed to anything, you'll only have your innate immunity. You won't have any acquired immunity. That's why you might be hearing people say, like, it's good for children to eat dirt.
Who says that?
People.
There are people who say that I've heard people say that us hiding away for months is bad for our immune system. And this is what they're talking about. I'm not sure the point carries, but this is what they mean.
Exactly, yeah, because your acquired immune system gets better over time with it being exposed to more and more things. And the more you're exposed to, it's kind of like an antivirus on your computer. If you only got like one thing every now and then, they'd only code it to defend against one or two things. But because it's under attack constantly, the developers of antivirus software have to constantly update it. So that's basically the same thing with your immune system, is it has to be updated by being exposed. So it's a good thing in the end to be exposed to stuff. Because if you get exposed to something and you have like a minor cold or flu, that's perfect, because your body can build up the immune system without being knocked out terribly. But the problem is when you don't have any defense against something and then it wipes you out. That's not ideal. Right, Kitty? She's very happy right now.
So modulation is an important factor. I don't know if any of you have read much about what COVID does to some of the people who catch it. There's this thing called the cytokine storm, which is a way of saying that some people, the reaction of their immune system is actually as deadly as the virus is, because the virus tends to cause your immune system to hyper overreact. In some cases, not everybody, to hyper overreact, drives your temperature way high, higher than people can survive, and so on and so on. So proper amount of vitamin D will make sure that the troops are mobilized when you need them, but it will also make sure that they don't overreact and then do more harm to you at trying to fight the disease.
Like this.
And we'll just figure, ignore the cat behind the curtain.
Yes, so that's kind of the idea behind it. And then like we sell products like echinacea, which is an herb. Echinacea is known to be an immune modulator. So it doesn't just increase the immune system, it helps your immune system react appropriately. Because you don't want things just dialed to a 10 all the time. You want them to be a 10 when they need to be a 10, and a 4 when they're supposed to be a 4. Right. So,
especially if you know anyone who has autoimmune conditions like lupus.
Oh, okay, we got to show you real quick. This is my dad's dog, Nico. Nico, look at the camera. Hello, Nico. Look at that handsome man. Aw. All right, there you go. Anyway.
Lupus, RA, a whole Hashimoto's. There's a whole host of autoimmune conditions people can have. If you've got an autoimmune condition, it means your immune system is already overreacting or reacting inappropriately. Yeah,
it generally means you're attacking your own body, which isn't ideal, obviously. And that's one of the things they're noticing with COVID is that people who are immune compromised and also people with an autoimmune condition are more likely to have severe symptoms, and this is one of the reasons. So again, that's why we are trying to impart upon you guys all of the different things you can do to try to make sure your immune system is functioning optimally. So that's what it's all about. Yep. So vitamin D. So everybody knows about vitamin D, like I said, and a lot of people know that there's 2 types of vitamin D. There's vitamin D2 and vitamin D3.
Did you know that? Who knew that?
Who knew that?
I knew that.
Right,
yeah,
cool.
thank you.
So it's one of the things they don't always talk about, but vitamin D3, cholecalciferol, that is the one your body makes naturally. So when you have exposure of your skin to sunlight, your body will make vitamin D3 from the cholesterol living in your skin. So you need to have fats and oils for this to happen properly, which we'll get into. But so your body will create it from yourself. So it's the best form, obviously, is the D3 because it's the natural form. D3 can also be found in foods, which are like eggs, fish, and liver. That's where it tends to be stored because vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, so fat-soluble vitamins can be stored everywhere, but especially in the liver. So, so that's important. And then how much vitamin D, like how much does it take to get that much? Well, you need to be out in the sun with your face, hands, and arms exposed for about 10 to 15 minutes in the summer months to get enough vitamin D on that, like adequate amounts on a regular basis. If you're not able to expose enough skin, like if I went out like this may not be enough. I've got a little bit too much covering. I might need to do like not have sleeves on. Yeah, exactly, do that. So you need to get enough exposure to give your body enough time to create this vitamin D. But when you're wearing clothes have some UV protection, so they prevent that from happening. When you wear sunscreen, you prevent that from happening. Not saying that sunscreen is bad, it's just you do need some natural sun exposure to create vitamin D.
Some of this depends also, the amount of time you need exposed and the amount of skin you need exposed will depend a little bit on your skin type. Janine is, I'm part Italian, Janine's part vampire.
It's true.
So it doesn't take a lot of sun exposure before I get a tan. So people who darken quickly are folks who will process melanin probably more quickly. I can also stay out in the sun longer because I darken. I'm less likely to burn as long as I take it in small 15-minute increments over a few days. I won't burn, I'll just darken.
Yes.
Doc can't say sun too often or she'll burn.
It's true. Yes, so once he darkens, he has a layer of protection and prevents some of the sunlight from getting through. I never tan. I just burn. And then I turn white again, and then I burn again. I have no tan.
There's this little peeling thing in the middle that's very attractive.
Thank you, Dad. It's okay. It's very normal. But so that's why, depending on your skin tone and your ability to tan, you may need to go in the sunlight longer. So people with darker skin need to be in the sun longer. And that's why you tend to see with like evolution, people towards the equator where it's hot and warm all the time and the sunlight is stronger, they tend to have darker skin because it helps protect them. Whereas people who migrated north to the poles and were farther away from the sun year round, and especially with like ozone and sun and the clouds and stuff like that, it can help protect you. So we needed to lighten our skin so then we could get enough sunlight so we didn't die.
This is a mutation. It's a mutation to adapt to lowered amount of sunlight.
Exactly.
To get enough vitamin. This is all about vitamin D. White skin is completely about vitamin D adaptation.
Exactly. Yes. Also known as mutants. No, I'm just kidding. We were watching X-Men last night. So that's vitamin D3. Make that one naturally. If you're going to supplement, you want to make sure that it's vitamin D3.
Not two.
Yeah, because there's also vitamin D2. Vitamin D2 is cholecalciferol. That one is the one you tend to find in like fortified products like milk and cereals, stuff like that, anywhere where it's been added. And most supplements, like cheap supplements of vitamin D, tend to be D2. But vitamin D2 is not natural. It's synthesized in the lab. They grow it from fungi.
Fungi.
So it's grown in the lab, and then they concentrate it, put it in stuff.
So if you, another funny thing about that is I know some people who will think that they are lactose intolerant because they react to milk. If you, let's say you're not lactose intolerant, but you are allergic to certain fungi, so certain mushrooms, you could be reacting to the vitamin D2 because it's fungal.
Yes, because like we have a friend who is allergic to one of the influenza vaccines because that vaccine is created with a certain strain of fungi that she is allergic to. So she can't take that one because she's allergic to the fungus. So that's why like allergies can get really complicated because it's like I had someone try to insist that they were allergic to the saline they got from the hospital. And I'm like, you can't be allergic to salt water.
You'd be allergic to your own blood.
Yeah, you'd be dead.
Yeah.
But if there was a contaminant in it, she might have been allergic to the contaminant, or maybe they put something else in it. We don't really know. But so that can happen. And then the other problem with vitamin D2 is that because it's not natural, your body doesn't put it away properly, it tends to build up because it's a fat-soluble vitamin. So you're not just peeing it out like a water-soluble vitamin, so it builds up. So if you get too much vitamin D2 on a regular basis, it can start to mess with your calcium balance, which we're going to go into in a minute. But it is very well known. Studies show that if you have greater than 100 micrograms of vitamin D2 a day, you can start to have calcification of your soft tissues. So they literally harden with calcium like your bones. Not ideal. And when you get more than 1,000 micrograms in a day, it starts to calcify your kidneys, which is not good and can obviously lead to bigger problems like renal failure.
Yes.
Which, yeah, ergo death.
Right.
Everything comes back to that.
Ultimately death.
Yes.
Yeah, so vitamin, in addition to not being very good for you, vitamin D is actually, vitamin D2, the one that's put in most milk and it's used to fortify flour, is really, really bad in large amounts.
Yeah.
So we want to avoid that as much as we can.
Yeah, so there you go.
Yeah.
So that's the difference between D2 and D3. So then, like I said, vitamin D is created from the cholesterol, the fat that's located in your skin. So the UV rays interact with your skin oil, essentially the cholesterol, the fat. It's all more or less synonymous.
Yeah.
It interacts and creates vitamin D3. D3 is unique. It's the only vitamin that is also a hormone. So that's one of the other reasons why it's so critical is because we all know hormones. They're all important. So weird, I know. So so that's what ends up happening there is it's important for your hormones too. So a lot of things can go out from there. Like like your neurotransmitters and stuff, those are all hormones. That's one of the reasons why when you're vitamin D deficient, you can end up with mood disorders and depression. Like if anybody's heard of seasonal affective disorder, also known as SAD,
A seasonal depressive disorder, it's sometimes called.
Yeah, it's basically when people, especially in the northern regions of the world, we don't get enough sunlight exposure during the winter months, and it depends on the longitudinal part of the world that you're in. So like for us in this area, when you go above Boston, we basically can't get enough vitamin D from like, if I remember right, it was like October through like May.
Yeah.
But then if you're closer to like south of Boston to like Rhode Island, you can get enough vitamin D exposure from the sunlight strength from like November to March. But so
presuming you go outside and get exposed to sunlight.
right, because that means you have to go outside, like I said, with your hands, face, and arms exposed, which I don't know about you, I'm not doing that in February. So what ends up happening is that a lot of people in the northern and southern parts of the world end up with this seasonal affective disorder in the winter months. So that's one of the reasons why it's sometimes a good idea to supplement with vitamin D in the winter time.
D3?
D3, yes, D3. So that's how it works. So Vines creates it, and then it goes from there.
Can we talk about fat?
Yes, we're going to talk about fat.
I want to talk about fat.
So fat is very important, and we're knowing that more and more as food science is evolving. It's one of the reasons why we promote primal and paleo diets, which we'll talk about later in more detail. But they're very fat-heavy diets because when we were, back in the day when we were hunters and gatherers, which is how we evolved, we ended up eating a lot of fat. But our modern diet started to think that fat was bad. So for the last however many years.
Since 1977, but I don't know anything about it.
We have been doing high carb, low fat for our diet, and we've seen our incidences of all sorts of diseases, all chronic diseases, skyrocket, and cancer.
Including carcinomas. Skin cancers caused by sun damage have skyrocketed since the 70s, and part of it is because without a sufficient amount of healthy fats in our diet, we can't, the protective melanin and the protective fat cells and the protective layer, the mitochondria of our cells is actually made of cholesterol.
Yes, your cell walls are made out of fat. That's why when you take like a tuna oil supplement or an omega-3 supplement, they'll always say like, oh, your hair, skin, and nails gets better. Well, because every cell of your body is fat. And when you don't have enough fat, you start to get dry, flaky skin.
So getting sufficient amounts of healthy fats will also help you avoid skin cancer. Will also help your body to produce more vitamin D from the amount of sunlight that you get.
Exactly, because a lot of people know that conventional wisdom is that when you get too much sun exposure, you can end up with skin cancer. That's where the whole sunscreen thing came from. And they're not wrong. You can end up with skin cancer because it's basically excess vitamin D that doesn't go away properly. Because what happens is that in your body, the vitamin D helps your body to process calcium. So what happens is that when you eat food that has calcium in it, you need vitamin D to help take the calcium out of your gut, put it in your blood. But then you need healthy fats to help take that calcium from your blood and put it into tissues like your bones, because that's where most of the calcium is in your bones. It also has to put it into tissues because calcium is a part of muscle contraction. So if you've ever had like muscle spasms, it's usually because you have too little magnesium. Sorry, it's the counterbalance for the calcium.
Right.
So when you end up with too much calcium, you end up with like contractions. But when you have too little calcium, you end up with like flabby, like low reflexes, low muscle tone. So everything in your body is about balance. But so vitamin D, skin, then it takes calcium out of your digestive tract, puts it in your blood. The fat takes it from your blood, puts it away. But what happens is that if you don't have enough healthy fats in your body, when you get vitamin D exposure, you're making all this D, which is then taking calcium out of your gut. And if it doesn't have enough calcium in your gut to take from, and you don't have any fat to balance it, it'll start to pull calcium out of your tissues, out of your bones, out of your muscles. And then it layers it inside your arteries and veins, which is called what, Steve?
Arteriosclerosis.
Exactly.
Hardening of the arteries is part of this process.
Exactly.
It's not the only thing that causes it, but it's a major.
It's not the only thing that causes it, but it's a major thing. So when calcium starts to line your arteries, it hardens it just like you have hard bones. And when you harden your arteries, your blood pressure will go up, which increases your chance of heart attack and a stroke. And then just, it's all not good. So that's one of the many reasons we've seen heart disease skyrocket in our country. So that's why you need to be eating healthy fats. So that's one of the things I do, is we try to do it with diet, but for me, I need a little bit of extra help. I have trouble digesting fats, so I do take supplements that help with that, but I also take a supplement for it. So, for example, when I go out in the sun, I have to just think about it twice, and then boom, I'm red. And I used to not burn like this. When I was a kid, I did not burn like this. But now that I'm older and I'm learning all this stuff, I've realized my diet has changed significantly since I was a kid. Not to mention things
Older.
Well, things don't work as well. Not that any of you guys know about that, because you're all under 35, right? Like me. So what ends up happening though is I don't process the fats very well, and I don't have as many fats. And I didn't go low fat on purpose. When I was in college, I went vegetarian, and by vegetarian I mean I ate a lot of potatoes.
It's a vegetable.
It's a vegetable, right? So I didn't.
Fried potatoes?
Actually, a lot of fried potatoes. Mostly potato skins and twice baked potatoes. So I did have some cheese, but I'm also lactose intolerant. So anyway.
Good dietary choices.
So good. So what's happened is that as I've learned about this, we have a product called Cataplex F, which is basically vitamin F, which is vitamin fat. So it's all sorts of good, healthy fats like the liver we were talking about. And I'll take that. I'll take like 6 to 12 tablets before sun exposure, because I'm so white, I need extra help. I'll take it about a half hour before I go outside, and I don't get sunburned anymore.
That's crazy.
And like, I'm not joking about that. Like we really, like, I'll keep it in my purse. So like when we go out and stuff, sometimes we'll be like, oh, let's stop and walk along the beach. We made that mistake a couple of times. I have the pictures of how burnt I was. 15 minutes in the sun, and I was red like a lobster. And that night I was like, I forgot my Cataplex F. So when we got home that night, I took a bunch. And then when I woke up in the middle of the night, because it gives me muscle cramps if I get too much sunlight. And now I know why, because it's calcium hanging out in the wrong places. So I woke up, took some more, and then I was able to go back to sleep, which was great. And then the next day, I was not quite as red, and I never peeled. So
yeah, vitamin. If you have very light skin, Don, Thomas, you know anybody like that? You have very light skin. Cataplex F is a good thing to take in the summertime if you think you're going to be outside for a while.
I took it before we went over to your house. So I still do my other sun protection, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, but we wanted to talk about the healthy fats. So, Steve.
Yeah. What?
You want to tell us about omega-3s and omega-6?
Real quick. Acids? Yeah, I think a lot
We'll do a big talk on this later, but we wanted a little one now.
Just an overview real quick, just to remind you, there's been a lot written over the last couple of years about the effects of omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. They're both contained naturally in food sources. Red meat tends to have more omega-6. Fish tends to have more omega-3. However, there's been some studies done in Australia, of all places, that if your beef is grass-fed, the balance of 6 to 3 tends to be pretty much even. It has even amount of 6 and 3. Here's the deal. Omega-6 fatty acids are oxidative, right? They tend to be. Yeah, they tend to be oxidative. They cause oxidation in the body. And omega-3s are antioxidant. Anti-inflammatory is the other way of saying that. And they work in counterance to each other. Now, here's the thing. One of the things with the way things are marketed, especially in the United States, is the message has to be kept simple. We've been told that omega-3s are good for us.
And omega-6s are bad.
And omega-6s are bad. And
they're not.
They're really not. What you want is parity. You want an even amount of both of those, actually.
I want to say, like, it's 1-to-1 or like 2-to-1 max. Right. But in America, so like omega-3s are like, I wrote it down. Omega-3s are fish, wheat germ, flaxseed, sunflowers, seeds, and walnuts. Omega-6s, healthy omega-6s, are evening primrose oil, borage oil, and black currant seed oil.
Those things you eat all the time.
Do you guys eat any of those things?
Yeah. Nobody eats those things, right?
Exactly. So it's all about the chemistry, and we're not going to go into the chemistry because you guys don't need to understand it. Right. But what you do need to understand is that when omega-6s along their chain, when they're in a certain part, those ones that I just said, you going down? Are you going the other way? Okay. Sorry. It's a little distracting. I don't have to do this at the office much, but she's so lonely. She hates that we're working again. Anyway, so omega-6s, when they're in one part of the breakdown process, they are anti-inflammatory, they are antioxidant. But once they pass down the chemical pathway far enough, then they become oxidative and pro-inflammatory. That is what you guys probably are more aware of, like the various like oils that you shouldn't be cooking with.
Corn oil,
Soybean oil.
Any oil that doesn't exist in nature that has to be chemically processed, canola oil is a good example.
Peanuts.
Almost any vegetable oil is going to be very omega-6 heavy and oxidative, and you want to try to avoid them as much as you can.
Yeah, because what ends up happening is that when you consume these pro-inflammatory fats, when you're eating bad fats, bad fat, like trans fat, if you remember that, what ends up happening, like we talked about at the beginning, every single cell in your body is made out of fat, and many of its parts are made out of fat. But you need to consume food on a regular basis because your body is using the food that you take in as a replacement part for something else that's breaking. It's like your car. If you put a bad carburetor in your car, you wouldn't be surprised when the carburetor broke down again. It's the first car thing I thought of.
Carburetor.
Carburetor. But like if you spend a little bit more money and buy a decent carburetor, it might last a little bit longer than a crappy carburetor. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Same thing with your food.
Nobody knows more about crappy carburetors than me. Cars haven't. You don't know this, but cars haven't had carburetors in about 25 years. Good for you. Good for you.
See, I listen. But Katie, help me.
Next time, tires.
Shut up. But yeah, so when you replace your parts with crappy parts, you're going to have problems, and you're going to have them sooner. So that's one of the things with trans fats and stuff like that, is when trans fats, when you eat them, your body will change over like the cell walls and stuff like that with the trans fats. And when your cell membrane gets trans-fatted, it doesn't allow cell signaling across the walls. It's one of the reasons it's so disruptive and it's known to lead to cancer, is because it screws everything up. So you want to eat healthy fats. So like again, omega-6s, you can have anti-inflammatory omega-6s, but it's got to be borage, evening primrose, or black currant seed. Those are the only ones that really are anti-inflammatory.
Those ones you have all the time.
And it will shock you to find out we have those as supplements.
We do. We do have them as supplements. A lot of foods, if you like pistachios, like I do, if you like macadamia nuts, they tend to have equal amounts healthy omega-3 and 6s, interestingly enough. And yeah, that's about it. Well, grass-fed beef has more healthy omega-6 than unhealthy.
Yeah, so it's all about balance. So again, you want them to be close to even, like 1 to 1 or 1 to 2. But what ends up happening is the average American is about 42 to 1 omega-6s to omega-3, and we're talking the bad omega-6. So it's not a surprise when we find out that people are super inflamed and they've got a lot of problems.
Right, and that's if you've been eating, we're talking about the standard American diet, fast food all the time, and all that. That's the
processed. You find all this unhealthy oil and processed foods. You find a lot of sugar, bad fats, a lot of extra salt, and preservatives. Those are some of the worst things you can find in there. Right, Kitty? So that's one of the things we do there. So so that's the fats. Does everything make sense so far? All right, yes. Cool.
Vitamin D and fat.
And fat. So
make sandwiches of fat and vitamin D.
So yes, so the average person doesn't really have to supplement with a ton if they make diet changes. But like vitamin D, for example, if you need extra vitamin D during the winter, we can hook you up with a good quality one that's made from foods that have it naturally occurring. It's all D3, no D2. And then the fats, there's so many fats to choose from. We have tons and tons of products because everybody does a little bit different with different things. So we've got like tuna oil, we've got cod liver oil, which is a great one in the winter because cod liver oil naturally has high levels of vitamin D3. So you just take one supplement instead of 2. So we have lots of options there that we can talk about if you need it.
El Prima.
El Prima,
my new favorite, El Prima.
So we got a new product called El Prima, and that one is very high in EPA, DHA, or it's a balanced combo of them. So the EPA and the DHA are omega-3 fatty acids, and what can happen is, again, everything gets out of balance when you're eating
unbalanced.
So these things can really help. So like the El Prima EPA is very good for lowering your triglycerides and boosting your HDL, though it doesn't seem to make a difference to LDL. So the bad cholesterol. It's not a bad cholesterol. They're supposed to be in balance, and it's only bad when you get out of balance. Right, Kitty? So that's that. So then next is the sunburns, like we talked about. So sunburns are primarily the result of not eating enough healthy fat.
Right.
It's one of the reasons why we've seen skin cancer go up significantly around the world, but particularly in the US, is because we don't eat enough fat to process the vitamin D properly. So if you burn easily, there's a good chance that you need some more fat. Because think about it, when we were evolving, we didn't have skin care. And when did you hunt? During the daytime, because you don't want to get eaten by a panther at night. You know what I mean? Right? This is our panther.
Panther.
A panther.
It's a pantry panther.
Pantry panther.
Lap lion.
So yeah, so
Couch cougar.
you can't hunt at night if you can't see. So they were outside for hours and hours and hours, and they didn't. I mean, first of all, they didn't live long enough to get that much cancer, but still,
Yeah.
they were eating differently than us.
They hunter-gatherers, even today, there's still hunter-gatherer societies, and the Inuit people, what we usually call Eskimos, the Inuit people will kill a walrus or a seal, and they have processes by which they salt and store the fat. They give the meat to the dogs, and they eat the fat themselves. And it's a population that until recently was completely cancer and heart disease free, and they subsist almost entirely on blubber. It's amazing. It's the opposite of what we've been taught to think. But if you consume healthy fats, it's actually protective against cancer, against heart disease, against these things. You just have to be careful that the fat you're taking is a healthy fat.
Exactly.
Coconut oil, avocado oil,
Olive oil.
Yeah.
You know, the huge.
The huge.
So that's one of the principles behind like primal and paleo, is that you need to have healthy fats. And another thing too is that your brain is primarily made out of fat.
Yeah,
So,
are you calling me a fathead?
you're a fathead for sure, right, kitty? So your brain, your neurons, I don't spend too much time on this, but when you have a neuron, the nerve impulse has to go along it, and the faster the better, pretty much faster reflexes, etc. So there's two ways to make nerve impulses faster. One is to increase the diameter. So that's why if you look at like a squid, like big ocean squids, they have gigantic spinal cords that are like super thick because they just have a ton of space to make this nerve impulse jump faster. But what happens in humans and other, like, I want to say higher level mammals, but whatever.
Monkeys, squirrels.
Oh, squirrels. Is that your nerves are literally coated with fat called myelin. So the myelin creates a sheath around it, and what happens is that it jumps over the fat. So it's going along the nerve, hits some fat, goes over it, hits more, goes over it. And so it's basically jumping, which is what speeds it up, right? So it speeds it up. And what ends up happening is that if you start to lose your myelin sheath, it's called demyelination. And that's like dementia and stuff like that. Those are those chronic illnesses over time that lead to mental dysfunction, is they don't have enough healthy fat protecting their brains. That's why, like, if you look at an MRI of your brain, it's going to be very white with the fat on certain looks. But that's what ends up happening, is if you don't eat enough healthy fat, again, your brain is going to change over. So you're going to be like a trans fat brain instead of a healthy coconut oil brain.
Right.
And then you have that study with the Alzheimer's people.
Yeah,
right?
this is amazing. Dr. David Perlmutter in Miami works with, Miami, Florida, he works with geriatric patients.
Right.
Surprising.
They're never there.
Right, but he works with people who are cognitively impaired. He's either Alzheimer's or other geriatric impairment. And he's found that they will just give like 2 tablespoons of coconut oil to these patients, and within 45 minutes, they'll have them before treatment draw a picture
Like
of something,
a clock face.
a face of a clock or a person, and then sometimes they're just, you can't even recognize what it is they're trying to draw because they can't cognate. They have no memory of what a clock looks like, so they take their best guess. They give them two tablespoons of coconut oil and have them do it again 45 minutes later, and they know what a clock looks like again. And it's not, which tells us a couple of things. First of all, that consumption of these healthy fats not only is protective of the brain, but it's also somewhat restorative.
Because a lot of people think that when you get nerve damage, it's irreparable, but it's not if you know what to do. which they didn't know what to do years ago, but
Sure.
now we know that healthy fats and some other things can make a big difference to your neurological health.
If you look up Dr. Perlmutter, his book is called Grain Brain. It's well worth reading, and there's a lot of good information in there about how to maintain your cognitive ability and get grain products out and put more healthy fats in to make you think better.
No, it makes a big difference.
I'm working on it.
Exactly. So that's why a lot of people know that they need to take omega-3s for their brain health. That's where that comes from. So there you go.
There you go. So like we said at the beginning, like vitamin D and its partner fat work cooperatively to make you to transport vitamin D that's made by the sun or in your diet, to transport it into tissues. You can't just talk about vitamin D.
Right, it's a little more complicated than that.
There's a bit more to it. You could pump healthy vitamin D all day, but if you don't also have a fair amount, 2 or 3 tablespoons 3 times a day of some kind of healthy fat, either contained in the food you're eating or supplemented on top or in the form of a pill, whatever way you want to do it, that's the ideal way to protect your skin, protect your brain,
exactly.
protect your cat.
Protect your cat, boost your immune system, all that jazz. So then along that line, the last thing I really wanted to talk about tonight, because I think this was more than enough information.
Is this enough information?
The last one I wanted to talk about was actually sunscreen. So like for example, if I go outside, I really should wear at least a little bit of sunscreen. Doesn't matter how much vitamin F I take.
Right.
I'm just very pale and I'm not made to be in the direct sun. I think.
Nordic.
Vampire. So I still will wear sunscreen, but it's also very important to choose a good sunscreen. Over time, they've realized that there are differences in sunscreen.
Crazy cat.
Seriously, we were here for like an hour.
She ignored us, and now she has to do it.
Now she has to do this. But so there's different types of sunscreen. So the 2 main different types of sunscreen are mineral sunscreen and chemical sunscreen. And I know what you're thinking. Yes, you're right. The chemical sunscreen's not ideal. So it's never generally a good idea to do chemicals if you don't have to.
So I want to just put something in your heads for a second. If you were a smoker and you wanted to quit, you could get a patch that you would wear, and that patch contains nicotine. And how does the nicotine patch prevent you from smoking? The nicotine is absorbed into your bloodstream, right, Kathy? Absorbed through your bloodstream, absorbed through your skin into your bloodstream. Men sometimes have to need supplemental testosterone. That's also a patch that's placed on the skin. It's absorbed through the skin into the bloodstream. What does this tell you? In general, what you put on your skin can be absorbed into your bloodstream.
Exactly.
There's no witchcraft here. There are medicines that are designed this way, so we know that it works.
Exactly, yeah. Your skin is your largest organ, technically speaking, and it's permeable. It's supposed to be permeable. So we're going to do a whole nother talk another time when we're done with the immune series, where we're going to go over like preservatives and other chemicals that are put into like makeup and moisturizers, personal care items. It's if I had to bring it back down to one thing that really got me into health, which my dad might remember, my friend Patricia from middle school started to get really into like the crap that's in cosmetics, and I started learning about it, and it's fascinating. And there's lots of information on it now. When I first started, there wasn't a ton of information. I actually would bring a paper list with me to the store, and I'd look at all the ingredients. So that's how I got into label reading, was more cosmetics. But anyway, we're not going to go into too much detail today, except for the fact that your skin will absorb stuff through it. It's okay, it's supposed to, but that's also why you got to be careful what you're exposed to. Another time we'll do a whole talk on water. It's one of the reasons you want to have a filter on your shower, because in your shower you can absorb a lot of chemicals, and they put a lot of chlorine into. What are you looking at? You looking at the chlorine? Space. So the chlorine in your shower is there for reasons, and it's to protect you. But the problem is that your body basically drinks it in, and chlorine is not good for you.
What?
I know, it's weird. Same with the fluoride. Cat. So that's one of the reasons why you want to have a shower filter and a water filter and all the stuff to get these chemicals out. So Does it do you any good to put chemicals directly on your skin on purpose? Yeah.
Maybe not.
We'll talk about the chemical sunscreens first. So chemical sunscreens are the ones that you must apply to your skin 20 to 30 minutes beforehand. Because what ends up happening is that the chemicals you're putting on your skin, what they do is when you get sunlight, the chemical interacts with the UV rays, and then it converts it to heat rather than a light wave. I'm not going into chemistry. So it changes it to heat, and then your skin is supposed to let that heat come off. So if you've used a chemical sunscreen after you've been in the sun for a while, your skin might be really, really hot for a while because your body is giving off the light as heat instead. But the problem is like we talked about with these chemical sunscreens, is first of all, you're absorbing it.
Right.
Second of all, heat damage is one of the best ways to cause cancer. So like think about if you remember those studies that talk about how red meat's linked to cancer, one of the things they kind of gloss over is that when you have meat that you cook on a grill, if you're constantly burning it, the burning, it changes it. I'm just blanking on the name. There's a chemical that's created, but it's basically like you're making the meat rancid, and then the chemical that comes off of it is known to increase cancer because it's oxidative. It creates oxidative stress, and that taxes your cells and then creates cancer. So like when they go like grilling is bad, they mean like burning it constantly. They don't mean necessarily like cooking.
No, don't forget cooking outdoors over charcoal or wood was the primary way that human beings cooked for over 3 million years.
Right, it can't be all bad.
It can't be bad. It's as the doc said, it's overcooking that causes the expansion of nitrates and all these other things that are happening now.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up.
I forget what it is, but it's
we went in a
carbonization.
direction I wasn't anticipating tonight.
It's related to carbonization. It's a burning.
Yeah, exactly. So, so you don't want to have a ton of heat. Heat exposure increases cell death. It's one of, again, another thing.
Cell death.
So what ends up happening, for example, quick aside, if you know saunas, everyone talks about the health benefits of saunas. One of the ways that a sauna is really good for you is that when you go into heat, moist heat, that's over like 100 something degrees for an hour at a time, the heat stress, because stress is good in small amounts. You want some stress. It's what keeps you alive, keeps you growing.
It's called hormetic stress.
Yes.
Positive stress is hormetic stress.
Exactly.
So how exercise works.
Exactly. So you want some stress. You don't want overwhelming stress or chronic stress. That causes health problems, as you all know. But heat stress can be very helpful. So if you go into a sauna for an hour one time a week, it is known to increase your health and your life expectancy. And they realized it's because what happens is that the cells that are sick and dying and they're turning over, it helps to speed up their cell death, which then increases the speed of which they are replaced with better, higher quality new cells.
Okay.
So it's a good thing. So getting some heat stress can be very helpful. Not if you're doing all of your skin for hours and hours
out in the sun.
Right. If you're giving off too much heat stress, and too much stress is bad and causes
You also can imagine there's a difference between being in an environment of hot air or hot moist air in a sauna or a steam room rather than hot on your surface of your skin. It just amplifies the damage.
Yeah, it creates chemical reactions.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm going to link to when we upload this video, and I can send the link to you guys, is I got a great article that talks about the different types of sunscreens, and they did a very good job of explaining this in simple terms. But one of the problems with these things too is that these chemicals, again, they're not just doing the heat thing, they're interacting with other things, and they didn't really test it. They don't do a lot of testing in the United States on stuff that goes into cosmetics and personal care products. There's a lot of crap in there that is like banned in other countries.
Right.
It's not good.
PDA or
all that stuff.
They used to put in sunscreens. Everybody knows PAVA.
PAVA, and then there's like parabens, and we have to do a whole thing on it because there's so many.
Most of the testing in the United States for cosmetics, they use rabbits, sadly.
Mm-hmm.
And what they'll do is they'll just put the cosmetics in sensitive areas like their eyes or the ears to see if those react to it, because they want to make sure it's safe for humans in case you get it in your eyes. So our sunscreen is just tested to see if it will hurt your eyes.
Right.
If you get it in there, not tested to see what effect it has on your skin long term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they've started doing some tests on this crap, And what they're finding is what we could have all guessed. They're not ideal.
Smearing chemicals is bad?
Yeah, so I wanted to read you. So there's some common chemicals that are found in chemical sunscreens, like oxybenzone. That's probably the number one you're going to see.
Yummy.
But there's also avobenzone, octinoxate, octocrylene, octosalate, homosalate. I've seen that one a lot. And then combinations of those things.
Thomas, you ever heard of these? No. Our resident chemist has never heard of these.
They're not good.
They're not good.
So what ends up happening is that they've started doing some research on it to kind of see like, oh, well, what's actually happening here? And what they're finding is that they don't want to see, like, because it's supposed to be a surface thing. Their whole gambit has been, oh, it's not absorbed. It's fine. It's fine. It's not absorbed. So absorption is kind of like, what's the right amount of rat feces in your food? And under a certain percent's fine. It's the same thing with this. As long as you're absorbing under a certain percent, they don't really care. So I think if I'm remembering correctly, it was 0.5 micrograms is how much they want to see absorbed in like an application. But what they're finding is that the majority of these chemicals are absorbing at higher rates. And the oxybenzone, that actually absorbs so much, they've seen people with up to 200 micrograms inside their body. That's not ideal.
That's a lot.
It's not good. And what ends up happening is that because it's a chemical, it starts to leach into other things. They're finding mothers who wear sunscreen with oxybenzone who are breastfeeding, they're finding it in the breast milk in alarming amounts. Because again, if it's doing that, what else is it doing? And what they are finding is that these chemicals, but oxybenzone in particular, are known to cause hormone disruptors. And you don't want the hormones of your developing infant child to be disrupted.
Not to mention your own.
Yeah, not to mention, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, not to mention your own. But so that, and then they're also finding that more and more people are having allergic reactions to it, probably because it's not like you're doing a little bit, you're getting more and more and more.
Smearing it on all day.
And
Right?
then when you add in all the toxins that are in the air, in the water, et cetera, just people are carrying around more crap than they ever used to.
I'm moving to Mars. Who's with me?
Right, exactly. And then oxybenzone in particular, also known to damage the coral reefs. And where are you wiring it? You're wearing it into the water. You know what I mean? So like, it's not good for us. It's not good for the environment. So what I recommend is if you can, try to get a high quality mineral sunscreen. So mineral sunscreens, the way that they work is they literally put minerals in there that help to scatter the sun's rays, and it's a physical barrier. So when you put them on, you'll notice that it's very white and it's hard to like make it go away entirely. That's okay. It's supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be a layer of protection. It's usually titanium dioxide and then, what was the other one?
Zinc, right?
The zinc dioxide. So those things they reflect off the sun. So that's the one you want to do if you're going to be using sunscreen.
Zinc, as it turns out, is one of the oldest sunscreens on the planet. The Romans would use zinc. They would paint their noses and ears with zinc to keep the sun off. This has been around for over 2,000 years.
And they never died.
Well, they didn't live long enough to die of skin cancer. They got killed in the arena first.
Exactly. So that's what we recommend is if you're going to do it, do a mineral sunscreen. Make sure it doesn't have any of these benzones in it. One of the best ones I found is actually Think Baby. Think Baby. You can find it on Amazon. Typically, as far as like SPF goes, you'll see conflicting reports, but it's generally between 30 and 50 is what you need. Like he could probably do 30. I should really aim for 50.
I do it in the negatives. I do -5 SPF.
And then people who are super white like me, there's no point to doing 75. 50 is about all the protection you can really get. 75, you're just paying extra.
75, wear a hat.
Yeah.
Just put your clothes back on.
Exactly. That's one of the other things you can do to protect yourself from the sun. Wear a hat, wear sunglasses. They make clothes, like they make rash guards and bathing suits that specifically have UV, B, and A protection in them.
Yeah.
So, during the biggest parts of the sun day, you should probably put a little bit of protective gear on top of sunscreen and stuff. And then the mineral stuff, you're going to have to reapply it more frequently because if you go in the water and come out and dry off, you're going to rub it off.
It'll wash off.
The chemical one is in your skin, so you don't really rub it off, but that's why you have to reapply. That one, like every 4 hours, is because the chemical wears off.
Yeah.
So, it is what it is, but if you can eat well, you'll get the vitamin D you need, you get the fats you need to protect yourself from the sun exposure, so then hopefully you don't get burnt in the first place.
Yeah.
And then there are some things you can do, but if you can avoid the chemicals in these things, like basically if it's cheap brand like CVS or Neutrogena or any of those things, it's generally not good.
Yep.
But this, like I said, I'll put this article, I'll link to it, I'll send it to you guys. It's fantastic. It's really well written, and they talk about this where I was able to kind of condense down. But like I said, Think Baby's the best one. I found another one, Beauty by something. I've never heard of it, but I could find it on Amazon, and it was like SPF 30, and it was all like good stuff, like shea butter and stuff like that. So there's tons of stuff you can do, and you really want to go after the thinner parts. Like you want to do your face, your ears, your part, if you've got a part, your neck, and your chest.
Your bald spot?
Your bald spot. Yes, if you have thinning hair, you really should wear a hat or consider just, ruining your hair with a sunscreen. I find that like I barely have to put any sunscreen on my legs. They're just white, but my arms will burn on the tops. If you're going to be sunbathing, make sure you put it on the bottom of your feet. My friend Spike, Dad probably remembers Spike from high school. He fell asleep face down and his feet were exposed to the sun, and he got sunburnt on the bottom of his feet.
Yikes.
And then he couldn't walk for a couple of days. So it was
kind of awful.
Yeah,
kind of
and it's a place that doesn't get a lot of sun, so it's not used to it.
So kind of quickly pulling everything. We talked about a lot of things, and we gave you a lot of detail to pull it all together for you. Thank you. Vitamin D is good for you. Vitamin D3 is really good for you. The best source of vitamin D is sunlight in small doses over time. It also prepares you. It will up your melanin if you have any at all. It'll up your melanin before you get bigger sun exposure later in the season. If you're going to go out in the sun, eat some healthy fats, coconut oil, avocado oil, almost any nut oil. Peanut oil is not nut oil. Peanuts are not nuts, they're beans. Don't eat that.
Yeah, don't eat those.
Don't eat those. We can also supplement you with fish oils and other various kinds of fish oils and other oils and other fat supplements if you need them. This time of year, vitamin D supplementation shouldn't really be necessary.
You shouldn't really need it.
If you go out at all. It's amazing how much D you'll manufacture as long as you're consuming enough fat. If you are going to be out for long periods of time, you definitely use a sunscreen. You don't want to get burned. You don't want the cellular damage from a burn. Use a hello.
Stealing the thunder.
Use a mineral base rather than chemical based if you can. And we're going to put a link in the notes so that you'll be able to find those easily.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, sun is your friend.
No friend.
Treat it with respect, and just if you can get your vitamin D exposure, like I said, it's very good for boosting your immune system, and it's free. You can do that right now for free. And if you can get your vitamin D stores up in the summertime, you can last through most of the winter with minimal supplementation. But a lot of us work inside, and one of the problems is that like windows block the UV lights. They did that on purpose to try to protect us, but one of the problems is that it blocks the UV light. So when you're inside, it doesn't matter if you're in a sunny window, you're probably not getting enough UV light to create vitamin D. And then along that line, make sure you wear sunglasses when you're outside for a long period of time to protect your eyes.
As good as the UV can be for your skin in small doses, it's not at all good for your eyes in any dosage.
Yeah, it can speed up like macular degeneration and cause other problems.
Protect your
eyes. So you want to protect your eyes because they don't heal. They're like your nerves. They don't heal super well. And you don't want to have to get problems later. But yeah, so all those things are totally doable. So get some sun, have some fun.
Right.
And does anyone have any questions? Don's like, nope. Okay, good. All right, Dada, do you have any questions? Kathy, no questions? All right, good.
You're upside down, Kathy.
All right, well then, thank you guys for joining us. We've got our next one coming up in a week.
Next Tuesday.
And I forgot to look up what that one was again.
It's about immunity things and health stuff.
I think it's the carb one. But regardless, check your email. That's how you got here today. Check your email again. We're going to keep these going. And thank you guys for joining us. Yeah. We hope this helps.
We know how busy people are. An hour of your week is a lot of time to spend with us. We really, really appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, guys. And Dad and Don and Thomas, if you want to hang out for a few minutes, we'll chat. Or, and Kathy, you can hang out and chat too. All right, guys. Have a good night.